Okay, so we will probably have some people joining later, but we will just start. And unfortunately, our colleague is not in the office today, so you have to do it to both of us to welcome you and to enjoy make sure that you will enjoy the presentation. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat box or raise your hand. We will have some time during and after the webinar where you can actually ask your questions, and then we'll unmute you. But please use the chat box if you have any ideas or comments or questions. And we will try to have a look during the call and answer your questions immediately or afterwards. And if you put anything in the chat and it's not answered during the webinar, we will make sure that you get an answer afterwards, because then we can think about it a little bit more.
That's good.
So hopefully you can see the screen, and hopefully you can also see us. If not, just let me know. The screen is, of course, the most important part. We will talk about that. So also make sure that you hear as well. The webinar is recorded, and a record will be shared later as well via our YouTube channel. If you have anything, let us know. But we will now start talking about VAT in the digital age. This is part 2. The topic for today is e-invoicing and reporting. One of the 3 elements that is covered in the VAT in the VAT proposals. So I should say, yeah, let's take it from there, right?
Yeah, let's do that. Wow, that's nice.
Yeah, hopefully your speaker didn't explode from that one. There you go. So as I said, we have in total we have 5 webinars planned. This is the second one. So let's just give it a go. What is e-invoicing? Let's start with that one, because e-invoicing is not new, and lots of companies are already doing it, or at least they think they are doing it. But e-invoicing is an exchange of information, and in this case, invoicing data with suppliers, with customers, with governments also, and with anybody that wants to collect or share information with one another. And it's sent as an electronic package, so with ones and zeros as a code in a file. That can be an XML file, that can be something else, but usually it's most of the time nowadays it's XML. So what you do is, instead of sending an invoice on paper in an envelope to your customer, you actually send him a short message via EDI or via the internet or something similar that he receives and that he can automatically then process in his own accounting package. From a VAT point of view, the rules are laid down in the new Article 217. Well, the article itself is not new, but it has been slightly adjusted and brought in line with the rules that are already applicable to B2G sales, which we will show you a little bit later.
Yeah, it's a proposal, so yeah, maybe it's a good idea, Bas, to emphasize that this is a package proposed by the European Commission. It is currently under discussion between the Commission and Member States, and some at a certain time in this year, it will be clear whether or not the package will be adopted by the Member States. And then this would be an amendment in Article 217 as of January 1st next year. So that's the first step from a legal point of view, which changes the directives, and we all should be aware of that one.
Yeah, and the date, we will also discuss that later, but the date is important because 1st of January 2024 is already very close by. So an e-invoice, that's nice, but what we also want to share with you that, 2024, you already are obliged to receive e-invoices. So at this moment, you can agree with your customer or with your supplier that you will do EDI invoicing or electronic invoicing, etc. And then you make sure that you link up with each other, that you agree on the format, you agree on the timing, etc. That's already allowed. And in some countries, it is now also necessary that you first get an authorization from the tax authorities before you can actually do electronic invoicing. From the 1st of January 2024, you don't no longer need the authorization, but also your supplier does not have to get your approval to issue an electronic invoice to you. So as long as he meets the European standard, you actually have to be able to receive and process any electronic invoice that is sent to you from the 1st of January 2024. From January 2028, it's also mandatory that you issue electronic invoices. That mandatory is at first only for cross-border transactions, so for intercommunity transactions. But it is very likely that member states will also adapt the European standard and say, okay, well, we now also want you to do that for domestic transactions. Also there, we come back to that a little bit later.
But if you look to the current state of play regarding e-invoicing and the 6 or 7 member states that have implemented local rules on that one, then the e-invoicing is mainly linked on domestic transactions or also the cross-border ones?
Yeah, no, at this moment, there are several countries that have some type of electronic invoicing already. I mean, most of you may know the countries already, like Spain, Italy nowadays. France is really looking at this, but also other countries are now doing that. And it's mostly for domestic transactions.
Okay.
And every system or it's a little bit similar, but also a little bit different from the others. And that is one thing that the European Commission wants to get rid of. They want to have one harmonized, standardized system for all over Europe.
Cross-border wise.
Cross-border, yes, because that's the only thing that they actually have some influence on.
Yeah.
We will talk about the reporting later, but the main reason for the European Commission to do this is they want to have a standardized approach so that actually can collect all the data on the intercommunity transactions faster, easier, and better.
Yeah, it's the fraud thing that is triggering this scheme.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the mandatory for the 1st of January 2028 for the sending of e-invoicing. It's not mandatory for the receiving of invoice. You must accept them. Mm-hmm. But is that also linked to the intercommunity transactions or also the domestic ones? What's the obligation there?
Yeah, no, it will be mandatory for the cross-border transactions, okay. Intercommunity supplies of goods, but also the intra-EU supplies of services, for example, and also the domestic reverse charge, where you have a foreign seller and a domestic purchaser.
Right. Okay, that's a good add-on.
Yeah, good. So we will get into a little bit more detail later on what will be the future, but let's first look at the past.
That's always a good idea to look at the past. Okay, good.
Because invoices, we always say the invoice is very, very important in VAT. I mean, I think I've always told everybody, every client that if you have an invoice, that's worth money.
It is based on invoices.
Exactly.
So if there were no invoices, the whole VAT scheme would not be, you couldn't apply it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it was meant. Yeah.
So I dug into some history, and the first invoice was actually issued around 3,000 people across.
It was in stone or not?
Actually, it was papyrus, so it was in Egypt. But I can imagine that maybe even cavemen were just putting some stone slabs there, and I don't know. But
you need to pay me. Okay,
yeah, good. Exactly. But this was actually for the delivery of beer and bread for a construction project, and that was I forgot where I found it, but it's somewhere in a museum right now.
That's amazing, boss. Good.
So I thought that was really funny, and but that shows that what an invoice is. Of course it's a legal document that lays down a transaction that happened. So based on that document, you know that a transaction took place. And there's some consequences on that. You can actually claim back your money if the product or the service was not good, for example, and you can use the invoice as evidence for that. So also from a commercial point of view or from a legal point of view, an invoice is an important document. And for VAT, of course, it's as I said, it's worth money because if there is VAT mentioned on an invoice, as a recipient, and if you're a business, you can claim back that VAT.
Yeah, that's the specifics of the VAT system as such.
Yeah, exactly. But that means that the VAT invoice must be correct.
Yeah.
So how do you know if somebody charges VAT on the invoice?
Yeah, it should be mentioned there,
Yeah.
I guess. So,
Yeah.
so more or less, you can't avoid it to explicitly mention the VAT.
Yeah, but you have a very good example on how they did it in the past, right?
Ah, you mean the Dutch one? Yeah. Then I need to do a little bit of an explanation how the Dutch treated VAT before the VAT system was implemented in this country, which was based on the first directives on VAT. I think we shifted to the VAT system in the Netherlands as of the 1st of January 1969. You weren't even born then, but
No.
I was already there, but I wasn't dealing with VAT as such. And before, omzetbelasting, which is Dutch phrasing of VAT or BTW, was levied based on an earlier VAT Act, and then stamps were put on invoices.
Yeah, so
No idea if you can see this, but maybe you have something in the slide there.
I haven't. Oh no, I don't have it here yet, but I will show it in a moment.
Then you should.
Let's go back to this one in a moment. But this is indeed the invoice from 1960.
1936. So in 1936 we had a multiple omzetbelasting system in place, and like nowadays, excise duties are levied for tobacco products by stamps. Those days, omzetbelasting was levied by stamps as well, and the stamps were bought by the taxable persons at the tax authorities, I guess. So they already paid the taxes by purchasing those stamps. And if they put the stamps on an invoice, it was actually charged to the recipient. And this is an example of that one. Probably this piece of paper should be worth something, but I guess, but okay.
Yeah.
Never mind. This is how it was collected in the Netherlands in 1936.
Yeah.
And you call it a B-invoice.
Yeah, and that actually goes back to the previous slides, which I thought was pretty funny. But
we discussed this one, yeah.
Yeah, we thought, okay, let's look at the ABC of invoicing. What is actually invoicing? When does it exist, and how does it work? So we said, okay, well, you have e-invoicing now. Before that, we had de-invoicing, so we should have had A, B, and C as well.
Yeah, should be.
So we actually thought, well, what is A, B, and C? Well, A was the analog invoice. So that is the invoice that was issued in Egypt 3,000 years ago, or more years ago, sorry, 5,000 years ago. That was on paper, but handwritten and some notes, okay. Then the technology developed, industry developed, etc. So then we had the e-invoicing, which was the basic invoice, I call it.
The typewriter invoice.
Yeah, exactly. So it was already in a typewriter. It was put in an accounting system, etc. So interesting. But then we moved into the real computerized era, where we had actually computers that prepared, where you could type in everything, you can make corrections, and then press print, and that was the invoice. Still on paper. And after that, we went to the digital invoice, which is a file that is saved on your computer, for example, a PDF file. And then you email that to your customer.
Which we probably practice already call an e-invoicing scheme.
That's, yeah. I think that a lot of people think that's in e-invoicing.
Which is not.
No, not if you look at the definition of the European Commission right now.
Right.
And de-invoicing or PDF invoicing is allowed right now nowadays in a lot of countries. In some countries, you still need to have some signatures on it, or you have to have some specific security in it. The integrity and the readability, etc., of the invoice must be secured. But it is just a print, but then as a scanned file. I mean, it's not really an e-invoice.
No, it's a digital one.
Exactly.
I think that's a perfect description, Bas, of where we are right now.
Yeah. So then we have e-invoicing. I don't know if we will ever have F-invoicing. I wouldn't know what the F would stand for. Anyway.
I wouldn't discuss it.
But right now there's a lot of de-invoicing. So yes, PDF, JPEGs, TIFFs.
Whatever.
Yeah, meant also for human processing. I mean, that is the goal. You still have you still expect somebody to look at the invoice to see if it's okay and to actually put it in a system.
Yeah, but I think under e-invoicing we are moving to the processability of an invoice.
Exactly.
And let's say benefit of the processability of those kind of
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
That is the key thing. Yeah. So you look at how a computers communicate with each other. That's what e-invoicing is. So there is still one person sitting behind the computer and say, okay, I have sold this and this and this, and he makes an order in the system, and then he fills in the different fields in his own system, and presses on save or send, and that information is shared automatically with the computer of the recipient, and that computer or the system is automatically processing all the data and reporting the purchase. That is the whole idea behind the e-invoicing.
There are a lot of people scaring of that idea.
Yeah,
they are not really in control, or the invoices as such are not under control of a human being. Then.
Yeah, yeah,
which is scary. Then.
Okay. Well, exactly, and well, I mean that we can talk about it later as well. How you deal with that during an audit, for example, or how do you make corrections, and what do you do if you disagree with an invoice, and why, for example, is the EU Commission not looking at a clearing system, which is something that Italy is now implementing. Yeah, exactly. But going back to this one, the idea is that computers communicate with each other. They talk to each other. Now, there's two different ways of doing that, unstructured and structured. And why do I mention that? Because the definition of e-invoicing specifically mentions that it should be a structured format. And structured format means that it has to meet certain protocols, certain requirements. Yep. And for the e-invoicing in Europe, it will be the EN 16931. Don't ask me exactly what it is, but I've tried to look it up, and I'll show you in the next slides.
It's a standard.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's also a standard because the sheet mentions UBL and CII and EDFIT. Are those the same standards, or are those other standards?
Others, yes.
But based on the same protocol or
yes.
type. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good to know.
And they are, so the EN 16931 is based on the current B2G requirements. And if you don't have any sales to governmental bodies or public bodies at the moment, you may have not come across this yet. But in Europe, it's already mandatory that if you issue an invoice to a governmental body or a public body, you have to do it electronically. And governments already are used to electronic invoices. And they are already using the European standard, as it's called, which is this EN 16931.
Do you have any experience with those types of?
To be honest, no, I don't actually. No.
Me neither. So is the Netherlands again one of the member states that is not really in sync with this directive?
No, it is implemented in the Netherlands as well. Okay. It's just that I haven't dealt actually with the Netherlands or municipalities so far. But it is something that is already in place, and that is also because it's already existing. The EU Commission said, "Okay, well, let's use it." And so the whole protocol or the whole standardization, the whole European standard consists of two parts. The first part is the content, the information that should be transferred, and the second part is the way it is transferred from one computer to another.
Yeah, get it.
Now. The good part for us VAT people is that the content that's clear, because that's laid out in the EU VAT directive. There will be some changes from 2028 onwards, if the proposals are all accepted, etc. So here's an overview of the current invoicing requirements.
I think the main ones, because if you look to the article itself, I think it's raising up to 26 requirements or so.
Yeah, no, exactly. I picked the main ones. So I always say there's 12 key requirements that you have to put on an invoice, but that will become 14, 15. I mean, the real new one is that you have to mention payment details. Yeah. And that is currently not automatically always put on an invoice. I mean, you may want to do it because if you have an invoice and you issue it to your supplier, you also want him to pay you, and therefore you give your bank details. But what the European Commission, why they are doing this, is they say, okay, well, we want to be able to track and trace all the payments as well. So you have to be paid on a bank account number. That's what they are asking for, more or less.
And how is this linked to the obligation for the payment service providers that are appointed to share payment details with the tax authorities as well, which is another directive, but I think it's already amended or it's already adopted. And that should be that goes in force at the 1st of January 2024?
Good question. I need to double
I
check.
think it's 2024. So,
Yeah.
yeah, this is probably all building up a huge data warehouse of transaction data together with payment data, and probably lots of artificial intelligence. That's scary. Where all that data is well, they call it cross-checking.
Yeah.
So I think the Commission brings in the view that it is a cross-checking data in that data warehouse. But I assume if you have such a big data warehouse that it is all artificial intelligence, which is driving.
Yeah.
The scene.
Yeah, and of course we will have to wait and see how and what they are going to do with it, and if they're actually able to make it and to do it. If you look currently at tax authorities which are they don't have enough capacity already.
Like the Dutch.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry,
yeah,
Dutch people, but like the Dutch. Yeah.
yeah. So how will they be able to, first of all, build everything and make everything work? But okay, already most countries, or at least 7 of the countries, have already said yes, we will be able to do it. But secondly, yeah, then they have all this information, and yes, maybe a lot can be automated already, but still somebody needs to look at it, and who's going to do it?
Yeah, but maybe it's good to emphasize that the European Commission highlighted that they will do the investment and the development of the, let's say, the European data warehouse, where all that data will be available for all tax authorities, not all people of all tax authorities, but certain people of tax authorities. But the big data warehouse is a European one under the responsibility and the investment and the development of the European Commission. But the underneath laying data warehouses that needs to be built on a local scope, country by country, is the responsibility of the member states. And there you will see the big differences between member states. Whereby some member states, you wouldn't expect it, but they are not the best in class there.
Yeah.
And again, for the Dutch people, sorry to say, but the Netherlands is not really in control over their own IT systems. So it's very interesting to see how the Dutch will tackle this one. I think, Bas, the new requirements to put on the invoices, the key ones related to the payments and the bank details and so on. That's one of the issues that is discussed amongst, let's say, associations in broad perspective. And I think a lot of criticism will be sent to the European Commission on those requirements.
Yeah.
Because it's sensitive data.
It can be, yeah.
So sensitive data is difficult to accept as a new standard for an invoice.
Yeah.
But okay, yeah, it's a proposal. But I think it makes sense for the European Commission to put it forward and to ask for this type of data if you want to do cross-checking with payments as well.
Yeah, and as I said, I think commercially, of course, you put a bank statement, or
it is already there.
Yeah, commercially you want to do it.
Yeah, but yeah.
That's also why the European Commission says, well, it's already there most of the time. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's the sharing of that.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
It's only the sharing.
Yeah. So the content should be there. So you have to be able to fill in those fields in your system. And then the next step is that you have to transfer those that information to your customer, or you have to receive them from your supplier.
So it's not intended to do it by email.
No.
You should stop emailing invoicing.
Yes. Yes. No, that's exactly. That's the idea.
Yeah.
And there's different ways of doing that. I mean, it's interesting. Paul and I had a discussion earlier, and we said, okay, well, how does it actually work? And I said, well, it's the same as 2 computers that are being connected here in the office. We have a network, and that's an internal network. Nobody can access it. We only have access if you have your own computer linked to the network. And that's also how e-invoicing should work. You create more or less a network with your customer or with your supplier, and that can be a direct link. It can be a more broader network, or it can be a really full network. And the next picture more or less describes that a little bit. So you have a sender and a receiver. They are directly connected, and very simply said, it's like a telephone line between two companies. and that's where the information is being sent or transmitted. And it must be secure, it must be safe, it must be fast, of course. And then, yeah, you can also say, well, I create a network where multiple people can log in, but it's one network and everybody on that network can communicate with each other. So then you call it a hub connection.
Yeah.
And yeah, of course, there's different hubs that you can think of, because one provider gives you that option and another country has that option. So what you also can have, and that's called a roaming connection, and there you connect different hubs with each other. And that means that somebody from hub 1 can communicate with somebody from hub 3.
Okay. To be clear on this one, because this is not my favorite part of this presentation, but this is hardware discussions. This is connected in hardware.
Yeah.
It's online, but this is the hardware part. I think the most interesting part is the software side of it. Or is it about hardware?
Well, what you need to have as a sender and as a receiver, you need to get access to this hub. And you can, I mean, call it software, call it hardware, but you need to be able to submit your data to this hub. And for that, you need a program or a tool or software, or your ERP system can do it directly. And examples are Peppol and e-delivery, for example. Those are typically standards that you can use for. I think I mentioned it here. Yeah. So,
but that's the software part.
Yeah.
Because we're all on internet.
Yes.
So we are all on internet, and then we are in the hardware.
Yes.
Or is there something to do on the internet where you explicitly go to that hub?
Well, the thing is that internet itself, you can go anywhere on internet, but you know that if you download something from the internet, it can have a virus, or you can actually say, or there's phishing emails going around, etc. So what you want to do is you can establish a connection via the internet or direct connection or something via a network.
Secure.
And that network should be secure, it should be safe, it should be easy to use, etc. And Peppol offers that. They offer a they offer a network connection with other suppliers and with other customers that are also using Peppol.
Okay, that's a protocol then, and you need to pay for those types of protocols or services?
Probably, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I think
businesses are more or less forced to use.
I think there's a couple of free ones out there, but I haven't actually looked into that. By the way, if you are listening to us and you think it's interesting and you want to ask a question, put it in the chat box. But also, if you can help us out, send us an email afterwards, and we can also learn from you. By the way,
Absolutely, we are not 100% specialists in this one.
No, we are specialists in VAT and in invoicing, but the whole e-invoicing and the whole technical part, we see it and we know more or less what it should do, but it's we are not IT people.
But it means that if the package will be adopted and it will be implemented as of January 1st, 2024, and you are obliged to accept e-invoices, you should be able to accept them in this type of environment.
Yeah.
And as a receiver, do I need to be in a protocol of Peppol with e-invoicing?
You can also have a direct link with your supplier.
Yeah, okay. So you need to discuss with the senders of those e-invoicing how secured and how let's say compliant you are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then there's various service providers that can help with that.
But do businesses actually now need to do something then, or is it still? Can we still be relaxed and wait for the adoption of the member states and then listen in September or October that it will be implemented? Is there still enough time to act then?
It depends, of course, on the company and the business that you have, on the ERP system that you're using, on the type of transactions that you have. But I would say that if you want to be able to receive e-invoices from the 1st of January 2024, start thinking about it now and check if it's already possible. Talk to your IT guy, to talk to the finance department and see maybe you're already doing it, but make sure that you check it.
Yeah, because it's already there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Good. Not any new investments or developments necessary.
For some
to be
companies,
able to, but that's on a local and systemized level. Okay. Shall I do this one?
Yeah.
Because this is linked to the direct reporting requirements, which is luckily not happening in 2024, but in the proposal direct reporting requirement as a compliance requirement should be implemented as of January 1st, 2028. And of course, if you want to do that as an extra reporting requirement, so you still have your VAT return submission that needs to be done. And nowadays we have the EC sales listing that needs to be done on a frequent basis. Then the EC sales listing requirement will be replaced by the digital reporting requirement. And the digital reporting requirement is the exchange of your transaction data. And it's not only on your sales side, but it's also on your purchase side. So everyone, the two parties involved with one transaction, both are to the tax authorities their purchases and sales, if those are cross-border as of 2028. And you may expect that it will be a big success. So 2 years later, after the implementation of this one, it will be probably extended to the local ones as well, as long as the member states feel comfortable with those domestic transactions being reported in the same way. So 2 years is maybe a little bit enthusiastic, but you keep in mind that this will be the future at some time.
Yeah. And of course, some countries are already doing it for domestic supplies.
Yeah.
And one of the main things that people are mentioning right now is they say, oh well, but if I now have to do the DRR from 2028 for European transactions, and I have to do, I don't know, the SII in Spain, for example, for domestic transactions.
Yeah.
So then I have to run two things and two processes, two systems, etc., next to each other.
Oh.
That is the risk, of course, and what the European Commission is hoping for and expecting maybe also a little bit, is that they're saying, well, even if you already have an existing system, you may just want to adopt the European system, the DRR system, also for domestic transactions, so that companies only have to use one system for both intra-EU and domestic transactions. I don't know if that will happen, but
probably that's the idea behind the rationale of the 2024 e-invoicing start and the 2028 DRR start, and that you have 4 years to, well, synchronize or
get used to it.
Yeah, to see as a country what you want to do there. I think the initiative should be with the tax authorities of the member states themselves, probably hopefully aligned together, but as we know, not all the member states are aligned if it goes on the VAT and the European perspective. Okay, of course there needs something to be changed, and there are two big changes in the legislation and the VAT directive proposed, and that's for the first one is the issue date of an invoice. For now, it is allowed to raise your invoice before the 16th days of the next month of the months where your transaction was performed. So you have a lot of time there. And still companies are not
Compliant,
raising their invoices in time. But that's a huge period of time. And that will be changed into 2 working days after the chargeable event. So sorry, if you now have a taxable event on the 2nd date of March 2023, you can invoice it on the 15th of April. And that's no longer the case in 2028. You need to issue your invoice before ultimately the 4th of March. That's an issue. You can only match this requirement if you automate the process. So getting a little bit comfortable in e-invoicing as of 2024 is probably also meant to make automated setups in the bookkeeping systems or the invoicing systems of companies. So they are already moving to this automatic exchange of invoices within 2 working days. And the other ones is that you need to report again no later than 2 working days. And if you think about this 2+2 requirements, probably to automate your invoicing will probably also bring in the effort to automate your reporting. So it is probably a good idea to think about it in an automated process simultaneously. You shouldn't approach this one as says, oh, within 2 working days I need to do this, and a second step would be in 2 working days I need to do this. Please approach it as a one step forward in your automation process of invoice.
I think that first step, the invoices must be issued electronically and within 2 days. Many companies are already doing it. If they have a transaction today, they already sent an issue today. So that a lot of companies do it already, but especially for service companies, it will be tricky. When do you issue the invoice? When is a service actually finished? Okay, that's already a question. But yes, for some companies, it will be tricky to do it within 2 days, but also to issue it electronically. So those are 2 steps that you need to do in the process and in the system. But then a lot of companies right now, they only have the easy sales list, which they submit at the end of the month, after the month has already taken place.
Which is an administrative burden right now.
It's right now, yeah, it can be, because you need to check the VAT numbers, but you also have some time to maybe check or change the VAT numbers a little bit. And you if you have any returns, you can make some adjustments, whatever. All that stuff is no longer possible. It has to be the first time right.
Which is a good thing.
I think it's good, but it means that you have to change your way of thinking. You have to change your way of working. You have to change your processes. You have to change your systems. And I think that from the invoicing, there will be much more pressure on the ordering side.
Yeah.
Because in the order, you already have to have all the specific data and information that you otherwise can maybe collect a little bit later when you issue the invoice.
Are you saying that the hassle which we now have in reporting at a later period in time linked to the deadlines of sales listings and VAT return submissions, that you bring in that hassle upfront to the order process? Is that the idea?
A bit more, but I think also that if you now look at invoices that are being issued by companies and VAT ID numbers are wrong. And then you actually find that out at the moment you submit your easy sales list. So then you have to go back to your supplier, etc., or your customer, and that you can do it now. But what you should do, of course, is once you set up the customer in your master data, in your system, then you should already do that check. And actually somebody from that master data team or the credit control or whatever should check that regularly. And I think you can use this also to put more pressure on that team or that person or on that process to say, well, we need to make sure that it's the first time.
That makes sense. That makes sense, because then you are automated the process, which is linked to these types of VAT compliance.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we still have 4 plus months to be prepared.
Yeah.
But I think the tip for the market, or the advice to the market, would be please don't prepare on a step-by-step basis, but please rethink the process as being automated and do reporting as a part of your order process. That will probably bring in some relaxation on, let's see, the effort you need to do there.
Yeah, or the stress that you have when you have to issue.
Well, it makes sense. Yeah. And again, if you are automating this process and you get rid of all those people that are now working on these types of reporting requirements, it's the beauty of automation, which brings in some comfort as well. So I would approach this positively instead of negatively.
Yeah.
But
well,
I see the scary part of it.
Well, and there's a lot of people, of course, saying, "Oh, 2 days, I'll never be able to do that." And can we push it up to 5 or 10 or 30 days or whatever?
Absolutely.
The other thing is, of course, that you now very often don't have to report the purchases. You don't have to report an easy purchase list, so to say. There are some countries that need that, but most countries don't.
Yes.
And that is something that is new as well, where a lot of companies saying, "Oh, well, how do I do that?" But the good news is it's all electronic. I mean, the electronic invoice will solve a lot of the reporting issues, because if you have that electronic invoice, it is a small package of ones and zeros that you automatically can also use for reporting. That's the whole idea behind it.
It's the digital highway, Bas.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And if you look at what happens, of course, now you have an easy sales list, you will have DRR. It goes from monthly to almost daily. Instead of a summary, you have to put transactional data, so almost line by line, you have to report that. But the last point, that is why the European Commission is doing this. Currently, they are trying to match purchases and sales in the EU countries. And I mean, to be honest, I don't think they will really ever be able to do it right now. Timing differences, difference in valuation, wrong VAT numbers, corrections, etc. So there's always differences. And that is what the European Commission wants to tackle here. They want to make sure that there's a direct match within 2 days.
This is the fighting fraud part.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And there are no other opportunities to do it like this.
Yeah.
You need to be live in your auditing. You need to be as close as possible to the transactions if you approach it from a fraud perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that is the main reason. And I mean, that is, I don't know if it's bad or good or whatever, but
I think it's good.
I think it's of course, nobody can say that fighting fraud is bad.
No.
And the only thing is the goal for the European Commission is to fight fraud and to make it easier for businesses. And I don't think that this is actually making it easier, although I think that once everybody's used to it and everybody has it, then it will indeed be easier. But there will be a lot of startup and hassle before it actually get there. Yeah,
the hurdles are there, but I think you should have to focus on the benefits if it's already live.
Yeah.
Okay.
So one of the consequences is that no longer summary invoicing.
That's a sensitive one, huh?
For some companies, they do that a lot.
What is a summary invoice? It's also linked to the question I still have on the 2 days invoicing requirement after the chargeable event. To be very clear on that one, nothing changes in the chargeable event. Nothing changes in the date of the chargeable event. Yeah, for some specific ones, but the chargeable event itself isn't changed.
Mm-hmm.
And the date of the chargeable event from a material point of view isn't changed also. So the formal date of VAT due, tax point of VAT due linked to the invoice date will be still the same, but the invoice date will be shifted to the 2 working days. So that's good to bear in mind, because all the discussions you mentioned one on let's say services that are provided on a continuous basis, and those kind of discussions. What's the tax point then? Yeah, well, nothing new there. Those are existing discussions. So there are no new discussion brought in by this proposal.
Yeah.
But summary invoicing, which is very helpful for a lot of companies to do the monthly invoicing for the transactions of that month, that will be abolished.
Yeah.
Which makes sense, because if you want to do a cross-checking of data, you shouldn't have the data on a transaction basis and not on a summary basis. So I think it's something we can't avoid. I know that there will be, in the responses to the proposal, a lot of criticism on this one. I know. But I think if you look to the bigger picture and you understand that the transactional data needs to be cross-checked, how are you performing those cross-checks if it's part of summary invoicing?
Yeah.
Then you should propose to do some other data reporting requirements that are not one by one in sync with the invoice, but that should be one by one in sync with the specification report, which is behind an invoice.
Yeah.
But that's complicated, and for sure not really processable for tax authorities. So for me, this is. I understand the discussion. I see the issues, but for the bigger picture, it's something we can't change or make easier for companies, I guess.
Yeah. No, exactly. And I think that maybe that second point is maybe, well, let's also put that positively there. And we already mentioned it a little bit, that EU Commission expects or hopes that member states will actually pick this up. And also, if they are going to implement something for national or for domestic transactions, that they are copying the European model. And actually, they're not allowed to do it almost differently. So that is actually nice that we will have one uniform approach. If member states want to do something, or if you as a business want to do business in different countries, you can rely that on the European standard, and that's nice because that means that you don't have to comply then hopefully with all the different requirements in the different countries.
Yeah, which is certainly the case for those member states that are not having already some types of reporting requirements. So the most of the member states, but or you should have a member state which is implementing a digital reporting requirement as of this year, which would be very nasty, I guess.
France.
Is that France?
Yeah.
Okay. That's nasty.
Yeah, but Italy as well, of course, they just implemented it.
And okay, but they are before the deadline mentioned in the proposal. So okay. Good.
No, but for example, what Italy is doing, they are actually requiring companies that are uploading the invoicing that it's actually matched with the purchase. So they actually have to clear the invoice.
Yeah, but
so
they have a clearing
system.
And they are sending your invoice to the recipient as well.
Yeah, and there's other countries doing that, like Turkey and I think some South American countries. And the European Commission specifically said, no, we don't want to have any clearing, because that is, that we don't want that.
That step is
so that's so that's also nice for companies. There's no clearing.
No. Cross-checking.
No, what there will be, this is VIS, which stands for VAT Information Exchange System. Actually, when I was still at university, I learned from the professor there, vies in Dutch means dirty. And he said, yeah, it's a very dirty system.
Which is typically Dutch. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
But anyway, no, VIS, VAT Information Exchange System. Right now, it's just collecting the information from different countries on the intercommunity supplies. And member states, tax authorities have access to it, so they can match it with the domestic VAT returns that are being submitted by the recipients.
But it's only on supplier data, though.
Yeah, exactly. So it's limited data, and the most commonly used thing for VIS is right now that everybody can access it via the internet and check VAT numbers. That's what it's used for mostly.
We do. Yep.
Yeah, and that's also what you should do, by the way. If you have any intercommunity transactions, always check the VAT number of your customer if it's valid. In some countries, you can only check if it's valid, and in other countries, you can actually see who is actually belonging the number to, which is also helpful. Don't only rely on VIS, by the way, but that's a different story.
Just Google the address of the company, and if you do so, you will be surprised sometimes.
Yeah.
On the address, the business address seems to be a local McDonald's establishment in the center of the city.
Oh yeah,
and then you know it's fraud.
But going back to VIS, VIS will be replaced by central VIS. And what central VIS means, and Paul already mentioned that as well, it will be a really big data warehouse. It will be a huge database which contains all the information for intercommunity transactions, and also later with information on national transactions or domestic transactions, because national tax authorities will also be able to access the database, but also to provide input on it. And that will be a magnificent tool for tax authorities to actually check and match data from purchases and from suppliers and from for customers. And that is the main reason why the European Commission wants this, because they think this is the ideal tool to combat fraud. That's simply it.
Is Big Brother or not?
Almost. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So and there will be, I mean, there will be sales information, transactional information. There will indeed be bank data information, personal data. I mean, company names and everything will be in there, which of course is quite sensitive. So there was already something said that it must meet the GDPR or the privacy and all the data protection requirements, of course, that exist, and it will be very, very secure. So it will only be very limited available by tax authorities. So there will be specific tax officials that have access to it. Not everybody, even within the tax authorities, can access it. And it will be, it will be also very limited use, so to say. Yeah. But that's of course, many people are thinking, oh, well, what happens to my data? And this is of course a huge, valuable data warehouse.
Yeah, that's a discussion. Absolutely.
Yeah. But the good news is that you will still be able to access it via the internet and check VAT numbers, and you still need to do that.
Yeah, that remains a requirement.
Exactly.
Know your customer. Procedure.
Yeah, exactly.
And for applying an exemption on cross-border supplies in Dutch, the zero rate, you need to have a valid VAT ID number on your invoice. If it's not valid, you're not allowed to apply the exemption. So it's even material as well.
Yeah.
Since the quick fixes. Yeah.
Exactly, and that was maybe one thing that we forgot to mention earlier, that if you have to report all your intra-community sales within 2 days after the issue of the invoice. If you don't do it, you are not allowed to charge 0% VAT on your invoice. It's one of the requirements to charge 0% VAT or apply the exemption to report your transaction within 2 days.
Okay. So you are immediately assessed for the local VAT rate on your cross-border sales.
I don't know how they will do that, but
wow.
It says that it's one of the requirements that you need to report it within 2 days. Otherwise, the exemption does not apply.
Okay.
So
that's a heavy one. Okay. Yeah. Good.
No
anyway. Questions so far. So let's wrap up and
yeah.
And
yeah, I think that well, if you look at the whole proposal, and we mentioned it during the last webinar as well, the main goal is reduce VAT fraud. One of the other goals is indeed to reduce administrative burdens for companies. I think this part of the proposal is mostly focusing on reducing VAT fraud and not so much on reducing the administrative burden.
Nope.
The European Commission says that this is the best politically possible solution that they can find. And of course, we've mentioned it a couple of times, this is still a proposal, but the European Commission thinks that this actually will be accepted. Now, I don't know whether it will be accepted as such.
Well, not as a standalone thing, but it's one of the pillars of more, and the other pillars, which we'll discuss later on, are the pillars where there is some relaxation for businesses in a single VAT registration, for instance.
Exactly.
Extending those.
Exactly. And of course, it is still possible to give your feedback. You still have a couple of weeks to do that. Before the 4th of April, you can submit your thoughts, ideas, opinions, interpretations, etc.
Have a look at the link, because you see the reactions that were already posted. And
yeah, some of them are actually quite funny. No, but if you look at what is proposed, I think that we have to be prepared, and especially because some of these changes are already valid from the 1st of January 2024. Make sure that you look at it at least, and that you know, okay, this may be coming. So if there's something I need to do it now.
Yeah, it's not a rush, but you need to put it on your agenda, and you need to understand the invoicing, the e-invoicing processes, and be prepared for the receivement as such. Yeah, I think that's clear. Yeah.
Exactly. And so
what about the setup of tax codes? What do you mean by set up tax codes there?
Well, what I meant is that you have to make sure that your system is capable of processing the different transactions, of course, correctly. But there will be some changes also with regard to the local reverse charge mechanism, those type of things. We didn't cover that specifically here today, but you may have to have a look at what type of transactions you have. And for some transactions, you may need to add a special tax code.
But that's 2025, I guess. The reverse charge mechanism changed. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And of course, your processes, the TCF tax control framework. Have a look at your tax control framework, and who in your company is responsible for invoicing, for setting up the master data, but also if you need to make any changes to your systems or to your processes, who can I make responsible for that in the company? And I think that's also key.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
I see that there's at least one question here, but if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. But we can also open the microphones in a moment. And I see the question here: when you mentioned the chargeable event, we are a manufacturing company. We invoice the client when the delivery is made to them. We may not get a notification that the delivery has been made within 2 days of delivery. How would that work?
Yeah.
So it's a good question, and I think that when you look at the VAT rules, look at the supply. When is a supply made? So the delivery of the goods, is that actually the supply, or is that the transfer of ownership of the goods, or is that the handing over of the goods to the person who will become the owner of the goods? I mean, that's a good question. When is the transfer of the ownership, or when does the supply take place?
Let's do an extra webinar on the chargeable event, and then for 1 or 2 days or so. But you can simplify it for yourself. If you decide that the transfer of ownership takes place at the time that you dispatch the goods.
Yeah.
And you raise the invoice from dispatch to guide the transport as well, and you automate the 2 working days to the dispatch date, then you're in sync. Then you're fine. And I agree, transfer of ownership is not at that time, but you have found a process which simplifies the question as such. And you should consider that the VAT rules themselves do have some specific rules on corrections of earlier invoiced amounts and the adjustments of taxable amounts and those kind of things. So you need to find a certain date which you will deem to be the date of supply and the date of the chargeable event. That would be a practical approach.
Yeah. And
it can differ from business to businesses. So don't take it as a specific answer to your question, but a general one. But it would be let's say, a common approach, which we see a lot.
Yeah, and of course you can open up a discussion on Incoterms, when is the risk transferred, etc. You can even look at the IOSS scheme or the OSS scheme, where they look at the payment date, because that is then relevant for that scheme. There's quite a lot of stuff that you can look at too. But I do agree that normally you would think the date of dispatch, when the truck is leaving your factory, yeah, then you are more or less handing over the goods to the customer in a way. And I think that could be the starting point.
Yeah, you need to decide on that one.
Yeah. So, okay, hopefully that answers your question, Andrea. Anybody else a question? And if you want to open the microphone, I think that's also possible. And otherwise, just raise your hand.
Okay.
So if you have any questions afterwards, then also you can let us know. Just contact us by email or send us a LinkedIn message or something like that. We will get back to you as soon as possible. The next webinar will be on platforms, I believe.
Oh, that's a difficult one. Yeah, good. That's good.
So we have a couple of weeks to prepare. At least that will be for us also some work to be done. Hopefully you can join us next time as well. And otherwise we hopefully see you after that for the one on OSS or the one on the other trends and developments. Just stay with us and make sure that if you have a question, just contact us. But thank you for today, for watching and for joining us, and hopefully see you next time.
Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.